Hello, Janesville, and welcome back to Park Place Views, the monthly program that aims to keep residents informed by highlighting the people, places, and partners of the City of Janesville. As always, this program is brought to you by the City of Janesville and JATV Media Services. I'm your host, Nick Faust, and I'm the Communications Specialist in the City Manager's Office. Now, on last month's episode, we were joined by City Clerk Treasurer Lori Stotler. With this month's primary election, it's a great time to hear more from Clerk Treasurer Stotler about the election process and how voters can find all the information they need to participate. If you're interested in viewing that episode or any past episode of the program, they're all available to watch on the city's website or on JATV's YouTube channel. Today I'm looking forward to being joined by Jimsi Kuborn, the city's Economic Development Director. Wisconsin's Park Place has certainly seen a tremendous amount of economic growth. In fact, the most recently available data showed that Janesville's equalized assessed value is now over $6 billion. That figure represents an actual $2 billion or 52% growth in equalized value since 2015. Integral to making that level of development happen is the city's Economic Development Office, so I look forward to hearing more about their efforts. First, however, a little more about Director Kuborn. Jimsi began as the city's Economic Development Director in May of this year. Before this role, she served as the Executive Director of the City of Converse Economic Development Corporation in Converse, Texas. Jimsi was also previously the Vice President of Investor Relations at the Rockford Area Economic Development Council in Rockford, Illinois. She received her bachelor's degree from Northern Illinois University. Thanks for joining us today, Jimsi.
Thank you, Nick.
Before we get started, I know a lot to rattle off here, pretty impressive track record. I thought I might give you the chance to share a little more about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, born and raised in Rockford, and went to school at Northern Illinois University. I started my career in the real estate industry in the early 2000s. I worked for a title company, in Illinois as well as in Boise, Idaho, and then ended up in economic development through a client who was a realtor who recruited me into economic development, right, for the Rockford Area Economic Development Council. So I worked with them for about 5 years, and I worked through different projects with business attraction, business retention and expansion efforts. I've worked on supply chain mapping, working with the University of Illinois Chicago and looking at the aerospace supply chain, that vertical for that industry. I've also worked on some property tax legislation at a state level for a House bill and a Senate bill on property taxes. Lots of different initiatives within the Rockford area, worked with the education sector as well, and a couple of different community organizations. And then had an opportunity to take over an economic development organization for a suburban city of San Antonio, which is Converse. So I was down there for about 3.5 years and completely overhauled that organization. That community had grown in population by 65% in 6 years. So it needed a little bit of a change in how it was doing things. I had a wonderful board that I worked for, and they gave me a long runway. But this is my home. I'm a Midwestern girl by heart, and so this opportunity came up. And Janesville is an amazing community, and there is a lot of growth going on. I've chatted with a few people since I've been here, and I think that understanding the level of growth that's happening in Janesville is not something that's happening everywhere in every community. And so understanding that perspective and being extremely humbled and happy to be here.
Yeah, well, certainly we're very happy and fortunate to have you here. And as I mentioned, in May of this year, you came on board with the city. So I thought maybe, I'd just check in with the first few months under your belt. How have things been? Are we running, so to speak?
Well, we're running every day. We're running every day. So it's been a matter of, catching up on some of the most recent developments that have come into the city, some of the most recent incentives that have been negotiated and approved earlier this year, picking up a few that were on the middle of the football field that needed to be carried into the end zone. And then, there's some different tax increment district creation. We've got some projects that are in the pipeline right now that are completely new to the community, some that are smaller and some that are substantially large. And then we also have a few businesses who are looking at expanding, which is great, right? I mean, that really is a wonderful temperature of your community. Not only are businesses choosing to come to Janesville, they're also choosing to continue to expand and stay here.
And grow, and that's good to hear. and we are off, we're running, because, I mean, economic development, I think when we think about it, it's really the lifeblood. It's crucial to our community's future.
Yes.
And sometimes I think, and we were kind of touching, before this on all the different things and then supply management, all the different aspects of it. But I think it's always helpful maybe at the outset for viewers at home to maybe kind of just review what economic development is from a functional standpoint and how it impacts our average resident.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to me. So I've been in economic development now for about 9 years, and it is not something that a lot of people are aware of what economic development is.
Yeah.
As I understand, there's about 2 universities in the U.S. that offer a degree in economic development. So most people in the economic development field did not necessarily get a degree in economic development, right? A lot of us come with completely different backgrounds, and that may be in planning. It may be in economics, right? Some of us are much more data-driven than business development-driven. Some of us come with a background more so in the business development, marketing, entrepreneurial aspects. And so economic development really is your sales team for the community, right? You want to make sure that you stay on the radar of your targets, whatever those targets may be. So they may be industry targets in certain sectors, whatever your community may have a strength in, what their workforce is in. Right, so that may be logistics and warehousing, agriculture, could be health sciences, could be R&D, technology, different, commercial construction. Every community kind of has to decide what its target is, and you need someone who's responsible to be out there and promoting your community as a great place to be, a great place to do business, and an opportunity for them to be able to have talent that is relevant to their work, right, to their services that they're providing, to the product that they're creating. So economic development really is out there trying to bring in new capital investment, create new job opportunities, to diversify and increase your tax base. Because if you create and diversify and spread that tax burden out instead of it just being on one sector, right? It creates more opportunities for the community members that are here for job opportunities. It creates more business opportunities. Entrepreneurial opportunities, brings money into the community. You're able to do more community development things, right? There's so much more opportunity to invest in other aspects if your community is growing. Because if your community is not growing, it is becoming stagnant or it is declining. And then you start losing money and you start losing opportunity and you start losing population and you start losing talent. And in addition to trying to bring in new capital investment and new opportunity and expand and grow your tax base, it's extremely important, and research also shows that you really need to keep a pulse on your existing businesses as well. So there are efforts that we call in economic development business retention and expansion efforts. And that truly is being able to have relationships with your existing businesses and being able to have some very vital conversations and understanding, how is your business doing? Are you doing well? Do you plan to expand? What type of expansion are you expecting to do? Because if you own your building, let's see if you have space on your current piece of land. If you lease your building, let's find out where else we can keep you in the community, because we don't want you to leave, right? You may talk to a business and they are having some pinch points and some concerns and they need assistance, and that could be from workforce assistance or different grant opportunities or different coaching opportunities. There's so many different ways that you can help show a local business that you appreciate them being in the community, that they truly are a part of the community, but also be able to connect them into resources to help them be successful. So there's a lot of different things that economic development does. It's not always just about incentives, right?
Yeah.
There are so many different aspects, and it can even be down to the single business owner, the entrepreneur. How do you connect with that person, right? How do you get to understand what their plans are and what they want to do for their business? And then how do you help them be successful and plug them into the right people? Because anyone who's starting a business, that's an extremely confusing labyrinth, right? There are so many different moving parts to that, and it's not the same path for everybody who wants to start a business. So I love economic development. You truly do make generational impacts on a community in economic development. It's amazing to be able to drive down the street and know that you're out there really working on behalf of the community. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the community supporting this type of work and supporting this type of position.
Yeah, so imperative. Thinking about longevity, thinking about all, And I think it's important to touch on that. It's so multifaceted in the approach to true economic development. And it's not something where it's just incentives or it's just one thing or another. It really takes an all-encompassing view from big firms all the way down to those small local businesses that, our EDO might help get grants, might help pursue, some expansion and retention. That's just, it runs a whole gamut that I think is so neat to see. And you've, Jimsi, with your work in Texas and then up here prior to that in Rockford, you've done economic development quite literally across the country.
Yes.
And, broadly speaking, when we think, big firms all the way down to those little mom and pops, what are businesses looking for in a community?
I think, again, that answer is probably dependent upon that business, right? So if you're looking on the industrial manufacturing sector, it may be importance of workforce. That's becoming one of the most important aspects to any business is, can I get someone to work for me? Can I find the right talent? So workforce is extremely important, but again, in that industrial manufacturing sector too, other things to look at may be location and proximity to my supply chain as well as to my clients and those that I'm selling to. And it may be different things also in regards to, different, as I say, fiscal partners, right? So incentives is kind of a fiscal partnership as well. So in addition to location, logistics, access to rail, highways, people, their own supply chain, those are extremely important for a lot of businesses. Again, if you're looking at maybe something more in healthcare or technology, workforce is going to be extremely important, right? And proximity to people who have that talent. So you wouldn't choose a community that's very rural-based because you need a higher per capita of people who have that talent. You may look into something that's more of the retail and service level. Retail really looks at a lot of different data than manufacturing and industrial. The retailers are looking at things. They use data from organizations like Placer AI. They also have a lot of people who run data for them, and what they're looking at are things of population per capita. They want to look at median incomes, rooftops, how many people own versus how many people rent, how many kids people have, how many dogs people have. They're going to look at nighttime traffic and weekend traffic versus day traffic, because day traffic is your workforce. Nights and weekends are those who live in that area. They're going to look at how much people are spending in that area. I've looked at some of these software programs. It's pretty amazing. Those cell phones that we carry carry a lot of data, and your cell phones are constantly pulling that data and selling that data. So they know how many people show up to a shopping center.
Right.
They know where they've been right beforehand, and they know where they go to right afterwards.
Yeah.
And they know how long they've been there.
Wow.
And it's crazy. And you can look at it at a retail facility, say a strip mall or even a regular mall, and that data will show how many businesses that cell phone touched and how long they were in that building and where they went to next.
Wow.
It's some of these businesses, the data that they have is amazing. Incredible. Absolutely amazing. But then, manufacturing and industry, they're really working more so with site selectors and brokers who dive into different data and help them sort through that different data. So, and then on those, we get a lot of those RFPs from the state level that come down and say, hey, we've got a manufacturer who's looking for 30 acres. They want to build a 100,000 square foot facility or such. And so then we answer those and we start pitching different properties. So it's very different when you're looking at industrial versus service industries or professional services and then retail. It's a very different approach.
Yeah. Needs vary and sector by sector. What you consider just can be so wide, and
that's what makes economic development so much fun.
Right. It's again not this one-dimensional activity. It's just all these different things coming together strategically. And given you touched about the national labor shortage, given the pandemic, inflation, there have certainly been economic challenges across the country in recent months and over the past year. Despite this, would you still say that Janesville is seeing strong economic growth comparatively?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So in the short time that I've been here, understanding So this past year for 2021, there was about $113 million in commercial construction. Prior to that, it was 79. The building department I spoke to last week, they had set a budget for how much they thought building permits would come in for this year based on historical, right? When you build a budget, you look at what you've done previously.
Yeah.
And they have, about triple the building permits
Wow.
of what they had budgeted. So that third floor that I work on.
Yes.
So we're talking public works, engineering, planning, the building department, the economic development department. We scurry.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Running all
constant
over the
scurry.
place. Busy.
And I know that keeps all city staff very busy. But as the economic development geek and on the third floor, I see my fellow staff members on the third floor, and it's busy. It's
busy.
very busy.
And that's awesome to hear. We had talked about that $113 million in commercial construction last year, which is a tremendous figure. And when we think about that and the success that Janesville's having, I know one thing our community has in the advantage kind of side of the scorecard is that logistical and transportation amenities that some of those firms, maybe those manufacturing firms, are looking for. How does your office translate those advantages into new development? How do we market that?
The transportation strengths?
Yes.
Again, it's really trying to connect with site selectors or different brokers or different companies that you may be targeting, and showing them the different strengths and investments that have been made in transportation, right? So for the infrastructure and the interstates and what those capacities are. And when you think about transportation too, not just roads, but also rail, right? Janesville has a lot of strength in rail, and there is continued opportunity with rail and spurs and such too, with the GM and JATCO site long term. But think about transportation and other aspects too, technology, transportation, and the moving of information as well.
Right.
And so Janesville has invested in fiber too. So there's so many different ways that you can talk about transportation and promote that as a strength, as well as the ability for, if someone were to place their business in Janesville versus being in Chicago, thinking about how much longer or how much further you can move your product because you're not stuck in traffic. Yep. So they can only be on the road for so long, and so if you're spending 2 hours stuck in traffic, you've lost miles that you could have moved that product.
Yeah, just getting it out of the metro.
Yeah, and even on the rail stuff too, right? I mean, there are cars that just sit in Chicago waiting for a train to pull.
And we are perfectly primed.
Perfectly primed for that.
To get that, and that's awesome to hear. And you had touched about the third floor just being go, go, go. And I always like to highlight this because one of the reasons I think why businesses choose Janesville, or at least the city has this growing reputation of being a good municipal corporation to work with, is our development team. And the development team includes the economic development office, the planning division, and the building division, along with assistance from engineering and public works that help facilitate all those daily activities and provide top-tier service. From what I understand, what we like to call our speed to market is something that the development team takes great pride in. When we're talking about working with a firm, what does speed to market mean?
Speed to market means that when you're going to come in and develop within the city of Janesville, that you know what to expect and that you know that you're going to have a great team and we're going to work with you. So internally, the team meets quite often. We have regular meetings that we go over what's happening within the city and what roles do we all play in making sure that moves forward. And speed to market also, there are so many different opportunities that a developer can come in and we're going to work with them because maybe we own that property. We've created these different tax increment districts. We have the ability to show them kind of the pathway through, the successful pathway through how to get through all the different things that may be required for rezoning or for vacating certain things, for comp plan changes and amendments, going through planning review, building permits. There's so many different aspects that you have to go through. And so the team really tries to make that clear and meets with developers to be able to provide that information up front and not make people guess through that process.
No, and that just makes probably, I'm guessing, the whole process easier for those businesses that are looking to really kind of get moving and get things going. They don't want red tape or,
No.
many of the things people could think about when you come to City Hall, maybe hold projects up. And it's great to hear that that doesn't happen.
No,
here in
and it's
Janesville.
great to reach out to city staff.
Right.
When you're coming into the community and you want to develop something or you want to redevelop something, it's great to connect with the city as early as possible and start that conversation so that we can help make it as easy as possible.
Wonderful to hear. And I think one sort of incentive tool or one resource the city certainly uses to encourage development, folks maybe have heard of it but don't understand it all the way, tax increment financing or TIFs. And I think it is always helpful when we sit down with economic development folks to just kind of give kind of a broad brush, a picture of what TIF deals are, what TIF agreements I should say are, and any recent examples that might be helpful to highlight.
So we just had last week TIF agreements passed through. So we created a new tax increment district.
Right.
So you identify a district, and there's a project plan put behind the district that looks at what are the development opportunities within that district, dependent upon what parcels are available for either development or redevelopment, and what those projects may look like. And using data to support what those projects could bring in as a capital investment and an increase in property tax assessed value and actual property tax coming in. And it looks at what type of infrastructure investments need to be made within that district as well. That all gets wrapped up in the project plan and understanding the value of that district. Once you have a district that is created, you have the opportunity then to negotiate and go through tax increment financing agreements, right? So TIF agreements with developers. And so, Janesville moving forward is going through these TIF as pay as you go.
Right.
Right. And so in some aspects, especially historically, some of those TIF agreements have been cash up front with what's called clawback clauses.
Yeah.
So that as a development moves forward, if the development does not perform as agreed upon, then the city has to claw back some of the incentive that was given. It's a little bit more difficult to do, right? If you're working with great partners, it's not an issue, but things happen in the world. And so as a pay-as-you-go incentive, so now the TIF agreement would be that as this investment, this development comes in, it's increasing the assessed value and increasing the property taxes from what the land was.
Yeah.
Right. And so the tax increment financing, the agreement, the incentive is you're bringing in this much capital investment, you're raising the assessed value, and you're raising the property taxes that are coming in. So from what it was to what the property taxes will be with a development completed, that increment, that difference that they created by bringing in this capital investment, that is what we negotiate, is how to incentivize by a portion of that increase. Not all of it, just a portion of it, is then incentivized back to the developer to help their complete ROI on the investment of the entire project. And that's broken out generally now for 10 years.
Yeah.
So if they're not creating enough of an increase, they're not going to get the incentive.
Right.
Right. So there's no clawback. It's a performance-based. It's an annual review. Did they hit their markers? Yeah. If they hit their markers, they get a percentage back as an incentive to help the entire project cost for them.
Quite literally pay as you go.
And as long as we all go well,
then
it goes
you get paid.
well.
Right. And Jimsi, I think that's incredibly apt to highlight, because I think I often find a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding when it comes to what TIF agreements are and how TIDs work. And numbers do not lie. They've been successful in the city of Janesville. They've been a net benefit to our community. That's just a fact. And to hear you talk about, pay as you go and the data that goes into it on the front end that makes sure we enter responsible agreements that work for the community and are favorable for our residents. I think I would maybe, if you could, have you go over a little more of that data on the front end when we're looking at maybe entering an agreement. Just how much work does city staff put in to sussing that all the way out?
Oh gosh, again, everything is so flexible. I mean, in an answer, not in an agreement. Depends on the size of the project,
Right.
So when we're looking at someone who might be doing a 50,000 square foot expansion project, and it's pretty straightforward to understand how much it's going to cost to do that project and what type of financing might be available, that company has to make an argument why they need an incentive to make that project work.
Right.
So it may be because the cost for them to in an expansion project may be to increase the capacity of infrastructure. And that may be things such as stormwater.
Right.
Okay. When you're looking at a new development, when you're looking at infrastructure, the infrastructure costs can get quite high because it's not just creating new stormwater. It's also water, sewer, roads, curbs, gutters. There's so many different components to infrastructure. And I think that's a lot of things, that people may not understand is when you're building, when you're constructing, when you're developing these projects, it's not just the cost of the land and the cost of the building and the cost of the equipment that you're putting into the facility. There's so many more moving parts, right? Again, that fiscal partnership. So if a developer or a company comes in and shows the numbers of the project, and this is how much it's going to cost to do this project, beyond just a land and beyond just a building,
Right.
then they can make that argument of, it's going to cost this much more, and we really do need an incentive to help offset some of those costs. Otherwise, we can't construct that facility.
Right.
Right. We can't expand our business, and we may have to leave or close. More so, probably leave because they're doing so well they want to expand. On the new development side, again, fiscal partnership in this. And the fact is how much it may cost to do so. And construction costs are only going up.
Oh, they certainly are.
And workforce costs are only going up. But that infrastructure aspect too, and other moving parts of a growing bill to be able to develop stuff, they have to show that they need it. It is a but for the incentive, this project couldn't happen because it's going to cost so much.
Yeah. So certainly, that dialogue, that data, that's all shown before the agreement, and it's fully communicated, and it really helps do those responsibly. And I think that's part of the reason why in Janesville they have been successful, and we continue to use them as a great resource.
It's an extensive application and review process.
Yeah. And outside of then, Jimsi, those TIF agreements, are there any other sort of tools or strategies the city would use to maybe retain those existing businesses we talk about that already call Janesville home?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the TIF incentives are also an option for some of our larger employers, right? If they're expanding their facilities, there are those opportunities. There may be grant opportunities for smaller businesses or for smaller things. One of the current one that we've been chatting with a lot of businesses is the Bounce Back Grant.
Right.
So that one is a $10,000 grant if you're leasing a space and you sign a lease by the end of this year. The state of Wisconsin has a Bounce Back Grant of $10,000. Just have to contact me, provide me with a copy of the lease showing that you're leasing a space that was vacant beforehand, and you can get a $10,000 grant. There are so many different types of grants, and it kind of depends on what kind of business that you're in. There are different ways to be able to partner with community organizations like the workforce development teams, Black Hawk Technical College. There may not be like straight cash grants, but there are ways to partner with different community organizations to offset some of your costs for training.
Yeah.
For apprenticeship programs, for different ways to be able to provide continuing ed for your staff. And that could be at a management level to multiple different levels within your business that need that type of training and continuing ed classes. So it may not be straight cash, but it could offset some. There's a lot of different things. Again, if you're a business within the community, economic development is really there to assist. And you call and ask for help, and we will do our best to be able to help you find those resources and the information. And we're a great resource and, free. So because we're, a city employee. So, there's a lot of opportunities out there.
And I think that too is something, again, I'm a bit of a broken record, but I love to highlight because I think when people think economic development, they think of the EDO, they think of these big projects, and they think of big buildings going up. but those folks that are small business owners in our community and need assistance, maybe just need somebody to talk things through, the EDO is there for them as well. And you guys are, or you folks I should say, are more than willing to assist and help on that. And so
yeah, we just had a lady in a couple of weeks ago. I sat down with her. She wants to start a nonprofit, so provided her with a couple of different pathways to start doing some of her research and connecting with people.
That's awesome to hear. And another thing that is super cool, I think, that the Economic Development Office does is there's actually, it's a strategic kind of initiative for us to promote the redevelopment of what are called brownfield sites or properties in the city that were maybe previously developed but are not currently in use. I know many of those efforts involve, city staff seeking grant funding and technical assistance as we work through redeveloping those brownfield sites. Do you have any kind of good examples or apt kind of examples, I should say, of recent brownfield redevelopment work?
Well, what we're working on right now, since I've been here in May, the conversations that I've been involved with on the brownfield side have been Catalytic Site 2 on the river, as well as the GM and JATCO sites, right? And completely different projects, completely different requirements and needs and opportunities as well. So on the smaller site, I know that there were several grants for assisting with the phase 1 and what's called a phase 1 and a phase 2 environmental. These are different types of assessments that need to be done on a property to understand what environmental issues have been left behind by previous use, as well as how you move forward. And make sure that you do not add to, disrupt, or cause additional human harm. And so some of that is on a smaller level. And, on the riverfront aspect, we're going to see things that are more in the retail, commercial, service, or multifamily living opportunities, right? When you look at the larger items such as GM and JATCO, again, this has been an extremely long process. And GM had it for a while, and then CDC, Commercial Development Corp, has had it for quite some time as well. And they've gone through extensive processes for multiple levels of phase 1s, phase 2s, and additional aspects for understanding the environmental issues and working through the DNR through that process. And understanding the long-term opportunities with that. I know that they went through planning and understanding, what their future looks like in building what's called the Centennial Park Plan, which is a PUD, a planned unit of development. And then there is a lot of different moving parts to that. And so we continue as the city to work with CDC as a partner in looking at different prospective opportunities that move forward with that. So each site is a little bit different. It really depends on what was there before, the size of it, as well as the scope and depth of how much environmental concerns were there.
Yeah. And so the city, being active in that process as a partner, when we think about getting some of those sites remediated if necessary and back into use, it's incredibly important function.
And we have to work with not just the property owner, but the DNR through the whole process too. It is not, we were on the phone with DNR yesterday, right? And so it's not just a clear delineated path of just do this, right? It kind of depends on, well, where's the site at? What was there? What's going on? What do they plan on doing? And then as they reminded us yesterday, we are regulatory and review. They are regulatory and review, and they need to review with us, right? And so there's so many moving parts to it, and it's open communication and everyone being on the same page.
Incredibly dynamic. And incredibly important. And thinking about another sort of kind of goal area for economic development in the city, startups are incredibly important. And I know that's a strategic objective for us. And the Janesville Innovation Center, or JIC for short, serves as a tremendous tool for startups in our community. Could you tell us a little more about the center? Yes,
the Jamesville Innovation Center, that is a facility that is technically owned by the city. And that facility provides space for those who may not be just, right out of, that entrepreneurial startup phase where they're working out of their garage, but kind of that in-between space, right? So they may need office space. They may need office space and a little bit of warehousing space. And so, as I understand, it's been full almost all the time. And so there have been quite a few success stories of businesses that have started up in that facility within the community. I know Shine has been in that facility multiple times with multiple different projects that they've been working on. And it really provides not only just space, and a space that is underwritten, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a regular lease rent rate that you would see on the market. It also, there is an opportunity to work with Mike that's over at the facility for different coaching and helping them guide through different things that they need to be more successful in their own business planning and their own budgeting and understanding supply chain and manufacturing, and then how to grow to that next level. And that's things that we have to look at as a community too, is once they have grown out of JIC, where do they go next?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's that incubating space, that bridge where, you got a good idea, you're working it in your garage, it's going well and you're starting to grow. You're maybe not ready for that big wide space. Maybe you need some more coaching and you need some more strategic kind of help. That JIC is the resource. That's the spot for those
and
folks.
there's so many different ways that you can work with startups, right? And so there's different shared space opportunities in coaching. There is JIC. And then there's, that next level too. And, I've even talked to developers since I've been here too. And it's something that was missing in Texas as well and other areas as well, is some of those speculative facilities that are not being built that are 20 to 50,000 square feet. Because right now there's such a huge demand on onshoring and logistics and warehousing to be able to tighten up the supply chain and be able to get product out to people. We saw that because of COVID, right? And so a lot of developers are, they're building these 100,000 square foot facilities and filling them. So even though there is a demand for 20, 30, 40, 50,000 square feet of space, it's not being built as much as it's being demanded because, the larger spaces are being filled as well. I mean, we're talking about industrial and warehousing facilities that have 1% and 2% vacancy rates.
Wow. Yeah. So the need is there.
The need is there.
The need is there. And it's important that continues to be something that we focus on, I think, moving forward. And whether it is those startups or those folks looking for the 20, 30, 40,000 spec buildings, all of that requires the city's economy to have a strong workforce. And as we talked a bit earlier, workforce is often the name of the game now when it comes to labor. What does the city do to develop and leverage partnerships when it comes to workforce development?
I think, one of the things that I can probably talk about at this level is, at this time for being here in this short time frame, is, I have had a chance to sit down with Blackhawk Tech, and they have some amazing programs and in way more capacity than you would ever imagine. Sitting down with Tracy and his team was quite enlightening to understand a lot of the different programs that they provide workforce training. And it can be in different service industries, retail industries, manufacturing, logistics, CNC machining, on the manufacturing side, running different types of, skid loaders. There's so many different aspects in healthcare. It was even culinary arts. Yeah. There's so many different things that Blackhawk does. And I'm not sure if all of the industry that here understands the depth of what they provide. And also their aspect and their capacity to be able to create different training opportunities for employers as well. Right. So that's great for, if we have a new employer coming in and we need to sit down and discuss with them what they need. Say they're bringing in 100 jobs and they're building this new facility and we have a year to ramp up, right? So we can work with Blackhawk and come up with a training program and be able to recruit workforce to be able to go through that training program so that by the time that business is up and running, they have what they need. So there's those opportunities on new developments as well as existing businesses.
Yeah, partners.
So that's just one aspect, right? I know that there are many more, and I'm still working through learning some of those with the different universities within our proximity as well as our local schools as well. Yeah,
those partners. You touch on Blackhawk right in our backyard, but tremendous students, tremendous faculty there that are willing and eager, and like you said, the variety of just what those folks can do. Yeah. You can plug and chug, you can create a program from a partnership like that quite easily, and that's going to be incredibly important. Kind of equally then as important when we think about that workforce, our growing population, and bringing much needed labor to town is the housing demand. And, southern Wisconsin is not immune to, I think, what nationally is quite a hot real estate market, high prices. Does the Economic Development Office monitor housing availability, track it, and in your opinion, from your time here, are we making some progress on that solid housing stock?
I would say we're a partner when it comes to housing.
Right.
We are not the leading office for housing, but definitely a partner in housing. And so for the EDO, we've been involved with more on the multifamily aspect. So for us, the tax increment district's funding capacity was amended a few years ago to be able to incentivize multifamily, because it is a way to truly increase the numbers of housing opportunities. The numbers, and for that is the accessibility as well on multifamily. When you look at some of our younger talent who may be recently graduated from a university who could be sitting on 6 figures of debt, are not in the scope and realm to be able to necessarily afford the rising house costs right now. So the median house price has definitely increased by substantial numbers over the past couple of years. And that may look different in a year, and it may look different in 2 or 3 years. Someone who, was in title insurance in 2008, things do change. And so, but the EDO right now plays a role more in the multifamily aspect. And so there is an opportunity if someone chooses to build a multifamily development within an existing tax increment district. We do have the opportunity, again, you have to apply, we have to go through weighing all of these different levels of costs and see if there is a but-for aspect to it. Also, there's been a change too in policy that there's an opportunity to extend a TID for an additional year and grab that increment gained, that property tax increment gained, and then some of that funding will go back for some affordable housing. So that is done through our housing department. So so the EDO does play a partnership role in housing.
And all about getting that, like you talked about, that healthy mix of housing opportunities, because it takes a healthy mix to create a healthy community. It
does, absolutely. You cannot just do one.
Right.
There's so many different levels of housing, and so many different levels in pricing, and, your rental rates, so many different levels of pricing on buying, and different types of housing too. Not everybody wants the same kind of housing, and not everybody necessarily wants a single family home.
Right.
A lot of people do, but not everybody does. It's really hard it's not in your best interest to pigeonhole and think that that everybody wants one product.
Right.
And things change in life too, so you may want one product this year, and next year your life's going to change, you need a different product. And so to be able to have that diversification in housing is also good for your community.
It really is. And thinking about changing times and kind of looking ahead, I always like to kind of wrap up our economic development talks, because part of it is a bit of a crystal ball. You kind of look forward, you kind of look to the future and plan. In your time here, as you kind of look forward, read the tea leaves, how do you see Janesville's economy developing maybe over the next decade? Where do we go?
Yeah. How'd you know I read my tea leaves?
Yeah.
I'm joking. It's interesting. I've been asked this question a couple of times, and yes, what we're working on right now and some of the things that we're looking at for the city to move forward on, some pretty large parcels of land coming into the city. And that is, again, of course, the opportunity is to look at how we bring in primary job opportunities, large levels of capital investment, again, to grow the community in the biggest jump possible.
Yep.
And so those are extremely important to us, is to be able to diversify and grow those different manufacturing and industry, logistics, warehousing, job opportunities for salaries for people to be able to have a livable wage and be able to afford to live in this community. It all plays a vital role, and we have to look at all of those different moving parts. And so as we're looking at these different land opportunities is, those land uses and what makes the most sense, what fits into the existing workforce, as well as, some things you may look at your workforce and say, what's the best lateral catch, right?
Yeah.
So if their skill set is here, how can we use that skill set for something that may be slightly different, but not so different?
Right.
And so there is a lot of planning aspects. For economic development people, we talk about what's called as a SED, it's Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, and they're done on a very regional level, and you take those different things and you incorporate them on a very local level as well, and still for strategic planning within your own community and city. So I think for Janesville, we've got these opportunities to be able to annex in, bring in different large parcels of land, and increase our industrial and manufacturing. There are opportunities that may come to in more of that healthcare and technology and R&D with different companies like Shine. In my previous experience, when you really get to understand your industry sectors and their vertical, you get to understand their supply chains and their clients, and then you can start truly recruiting within that as well, and making sure that they're so entwined into your community because they have more than one partner in the community. So I think Janesville has a lot of opportunity in that component. It has different opportunity to be able to continue to grow its population, which it has been doing, because it is more affordable than some other areas.
Yeah.
I know that it is increasing. The cost of living is increasing. We're not immune to that. But again, perspective-wise, we're still more affordable than other areas. And it's a beautiful community with 64 parks, and it's a safe community, and it's clean, and it's welcoming, and it's Midwestern, and it's friendly, and there are so many different strengths to this community. It's investing in itself.
Yeah.
Not every community is. We've got some very passionate individuals, business owners, and leaders in this community that I've already been able to have these extremely exciting conversations about. There's such a dynamic of people who are working in our downtown sector. And it's really neat to see. And trust me, there are communities who aren't doing these things, who aren't planning, who aren't getting the right passion, energy, and money and ideas and getting these projects moving forward. So I think it's exciting.
It is exciting. And that was a good question to really wrap up on, because you painted a very, very nice picture and an exciting picture. There's so much working for this community, and we have the right people, we have the right resources, and it's always a great time to sit down with you and talk about all the good things ahead for us. If residents are interested in keeping up on all that good stuff coming, where should they go? Where should they get their economic development fix?
Well, Nick, you help us with all of that.
Oh, do I?
So for the city's website connects right into the economic development website. We're part of the city's website, and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and all of that too. Anyone who has any questions can reach out to me at City Hall or even LinkedIn. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. There's not a lot of Jimsis in the world.
No.
So, but absolutely, there's different ways to connect in with the city. Do connect in with economic development. I know we may not be as exciting as, the cool things that the Park District's doing, but I think it's cool.
Yes, and it certainly is. It certainly is. And I want to thank you for joining us today, Jimsi, and more so, I want to thank you for all you're doing in the Economic Development Office. It is critical, and you have hit the ground running here in Janesville, and that is so important when we think about maintaining the momentum we have and growing it. So we're very fortunate to have you, and so excited for what's to come.
Thank you, Nick.
Awesome. And I want to thank you, our viewers and residents, for tuning in today and for all you do to help make Janesville a community of choice to realize life's opportunities. I invite you to stay connected with the city by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, signing up for emergency notifications via the JPD on the Nixle app, and signing up to receive our weekly city press releases by visiting www.janesvillewi.gov/email lists. I also want to encourage you to tune into the program next month when I sit down with City Assessor Michelle Lobby as the city prepares for a reval of all residential and commercial properties. It'll be fantastic to have City Assessor Lobby join us to discuss that effort and answer questions about the assessment process. For Park Place Views in the City of Janesville, I'm Nick Faust. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next month.